They always pray for things that are feasible. You know, I got a toothache, will it diminish? Well, it usually does. And people get sick, and they usually get well in most instances, unless you go to an old folks' home. It's less probable. So prayer seemed ridiculous because a guy would come with no legs and say, I need legs badly. And he'd have legs. That would be a miracle. And then I watched the Pope. When he prays, he always points to God. But when he goes to China, he points the wrong way. You know what I mean? He points the opposite direction. Depends on where he is in the world. He's pointing all over the place. They used to believe the earth was flat, you know, so that reference is still there. I'll see you at sunrise. We still talk that way. The sun doesn't rise, the earth rotates. Our language was designed hundreds of years ago. So are our values, and they don't work. So we need to update our language, and I asked the question then, is it possible to develop a language without conflict? I noticed that the Bible was subject to interpretation. Guy reads it and he says, I think Jesus meant this. Oh no, he meant that. So you got the Lutheran, the Seventh-day Adventists, the Church of God, the Catholics, because it's subject to interpretation. But chemistry, mathematics, physics, and engineering is not. When they talk to each other, if you send a blueprint to Japan of an airplane design, it's not subject to interpretation. So it is possible to make a language without conflict in it. So when engineers talk to each other, I want to get this across to the public, they don't say this is the strongest metal devised. They say this wire can take 70,000 pounds per square inch. And the other engineer doesn't say, gee, that's great. He puts it in a machine and he pulls it apart and it ruptures at 70,000 pounds. He says, I accept that. I love that system. So when they design airplanes, they put it through a 9G dive to see if the wings hold up. Then after they figure the wings can support so many pounds per square foot, they pile sandbags on it until the wings break. Did you know that? To check out that calculation. Then the airplane industry will pull a passenger airplane loaded with sandbags 25 feet up in the air and cut the strand, boom, the plane, to see if the landing gear holds up. I love that system. There's no checkout in Congress. These are a bunch of men sitting around talking about people, serious problems, and they have no knowledge of the earth, technology, so our problems are really not political. They can't be solved by Democrats, Republicans, Socialists, Communists, Fascists. They can only be solved by technology. If you have difficulty with that, consider this. What have you got in your house that you like? Your electric lights, your telephone, it's all technology. Congressmen don't give you any of that. All the things you have, your shower, your hot water, your automobiles, everything that may advance you is technology. So a woman at one of my seminars crying, she said, well, technology isn't everything. And I said, well, tell me where it isn't. She said the neighbor's kids climbed over her fence and they were drowned in her swimming pool. And she said, now that kind of stuff bothers me. She said, well, what do you do with things like that? So I said, that's easy. You put a net under the pool. And when you leave home, the net comes up. And if you're in the kitchen cooking and your kids are swimming, you don't know what they're doing, and one of the kids drowned and hit that net on the bottom, it comes up right away. Gee, she says, why do they do that? I says, there's no such thing as they. It's going to take a different kind of culture. People keep talking about they. Why don't they do that? They are pretty dumb out there because they're all schooled in the same schools. So then I read of airplanes crashing, you know, or crash landing, and everybody's alive in it. But then the gasoline tank breaks and touches the hot engine, and boom, that's when the people are killed. So at that time, I was bothered by that. So I designed a cylinder that blows the fuel out in an emergency landing. Do you understand? It blows the fuel by an inert gas, so it doesn't catch fire. And then you come in for a landing. If the brakes fail on the airplane, tough. It may run into the hangar, people. So I designed, this is long before the aircraft carriers had arresting gear that come up. It's a net of steel to stop the airplane from rolling on. So I began to see problems as technological negligence. You know what I mean? I got that from when I was a kid. You have to take my word for this. The streetcars had a platform on the side. And you got on the platform and in the car, and the seats went all the way through. There was no standing room. So if you were late for work, they'd hang on the platform. and they were hit by cars. A lot of people were killed. So they put a sign, please get in the car, but don't stay on the platform. A guy late for work, they stay on the platform. Well, that went on for 10 years. Then they got a conductor to get you in the car with a soft reader or off the platform. But he had to get on in the car when it was in motion. So they took the problem to an engineering company. And the engineering company said, what do you want? We don't want the people on the platform. Good. So they retracted it. All the verbal politicians, too bad, 3 people were killed. Kids were killed at a crossing, school crossing, because mother, fine person, church-going mother, her kids were fighting in the back, and she turned around for a short time. She ran into a whole bunch of kids crossing. So I said, what a terrible person. She should look at the road. Well, it's very hard for people to do all those things. So I designed a pavement that looks like a comb. When the kid presses a button, the red light goes on, but then the pavement turns up like that. Mm-hmm. So no car can hit a kid. Is that clear? Radio City and the Empire State Building takes 1 million people a year up and down. They never crash. They never hit each other. Even if you cut the cable on an elevator today, the braking system goes out right away. It's redundant. If they're operating in a hospital today and there's a power failure, the emergency lighting goes on. That's called redundancy. So the question is, well, how would you arrange government so it works? I said, now that's a very hard question because you're already conditioned to think in democracy, that you participate and all that. I said, the government of the future will be very different. Like that picture with the globe, you have to look at it, those of you that can see it. There's the earth and computer imaging all around it. That's the government of the future. Here's how it works. The Department of Agriculture is one of those little image screens, has its tentacles, electrical, into the soil. And if the water table drops, that pumps water out there. If the nutrients change, it pumps nutrients out there. It monitors the soil for toxic materials. They monitor the atmosphere, toxins. You don't need a Department of Agriculture that says it's been a drought and the plants are dying, and the president says, how bad is it? The drought is so bad that all the corn is drying out. So the president flies over, he says, so it is. Mm-hmm. So what? The problems are technical, not political. Do you understand that? I don't care how liberal you are. If you were elected the most ethical people in the government, if you ran out of resources, same old problems. So I'm trying to tell you how you do it. You put satellites around the world. Now, I don't know if you know this, but you can look it up if you don't believe me. From 3,000 miles out in space, with special cameras that the Army Air Force has, you can photograph plant diseases all over the world. They show up as red. So you see the whole world plant diseases in one shot. Every hurricane, every ship at sea, since you got all these satellites, show you every plane in the air. So you have a little globe at home that shows you everything. So if you connect your computers, and not the people, a bunch of dummies, to industry, transportation, manufacturing, you know what I mean? So if you wanted to ship, say, 500 cars to New Orleans, the computer will say you can't do that. The bridges are washed out because of satellite observation. About 8 years ago, IBM came up with a computer that can handle 1,000 trillion bits of information per second. Now, no group of humans can do that. They are not capable of doing that. So, the Army Air Force, this is where I'm going to answer your questions, used to judge height of an airplane. Then Doppler radar was given the assignment of telling a pilot how high he is. It didn't take over. It was assigned that because it worked. Now, planes fly 2,000 miles an hour today and more, and you can't see an enemy coming. You know, it's just too fast. So they have a scope in front of military planes that scan the environment and tell you with a dot where that plane's going to be in the next 15 or 30 seconds. And even if you press the gun for bullets to fire at that plane, no bullets come out unless that plane is within the cone of fire where the bullets are. That's all computerized. They're taking those decisions away from the pilot. And I can assure you within 10 years, most airliners will be flown by machines. Not one, but 6 of them on separate circuits. So man can't manage the Earth anymore. It's so complicated, so much technology, you have to build a nervous system.